We are a little publicity shy, so we meet only when our reports are tabled in the media. Let me also mention that we consider media to be a very valuable partner in the whole accountability process. Our job ends once the reports are finalized by us, signed by the CAG and tabled in the Vidhan Sabha. But real effective action on these reports can only be taken if there is pressure from various other agencies, and I think media's role is very, very important in this. We are very grateful. Even in the past, we have found that the media has given excellent coverage to our reports, and there are a number of issues which are in the limelight, which have been in the limelight in the recent past, primarily because of the issues raised by us in our reports and which have been taken up by the media and further explored. We, as you probably all would know, that we present 4 reports every year. All the 4 reports for the year ending 31st March 2016 were presented today. Normally they would have been presented in the budget session, but since it's an extraordinary year, we had elections. The budget session is going to be delayed and most likely will be held only in June or July, depending on the period for which the vote on account has been taken. So since the vote on account session was on for a few days, we requested the government to place these reports during the session itself. So what I'm going to do today, as we have done in the past, is that quickly we have a small presentation, not a very small presentation, I think it's got about 40-45 slides, on some of the major issues which have been included in the 4 audit reports which were placed today. We've also, I think you would have all got a copy of the pen drive which includes the detailed report, the full report, all the full reports of all the 4 reports, and also a brief, what is called the overview, or which we also call the press brief. So you could refer to that at your leisure, depending on what you find interesting in this report for your purposes. Presentation, we've also tried and put the paragraph numbers and page numbers on each slide, so that if you want to, of course, in the presentation we'll only be giving you broad bullet points. It will not be possible for us to explain to you the details of the transactions which have been included in the report. But if you want to follow that up, the reference to the page number and the paragraph will be there. So if you, with your permission now, I'll start with the presentation. As I mentioned that I think it's too far. On the sides you can make use of this. Of course, the front one has been blocked. This is a brief on the constitutional provisions. The CAG places these reports as per Article 151. And as I mentioned, there are 4 reports which have been presented today on 29th of March 2017. The 4 reports are, we actually do one report on the state of finances, which gives you the macroeconomic picture of the state, how the state is performing on the economic front. Then we have 3 detailed reports. One is on all the civil departments. Then there is one only on revenue receipts or revenue sector, which basically includes the Office of the Excise and Taxation Commissioner, which administer a number of taxes, plus motor vehicles, stamp duty, registration and other important revenue receipts. And plus we have a separate report on public sector undertakings. So all the PSUs within the state of Punjab are covered in this report. Just covers, and we'll go quickly one by one. We'll start with the state finance report, as I said, which gives you the macro picture of the state of finances. In this report we have 3 chapters. One is basically gives you the broad economic aggregates or fiscal aggregates, and we try and analyze them, how the state has been doing. We also do a time series analysis to see how the state has been performing on various economic parameters over a period of 5 years. This of course includes also, last year we did, and which was reported by the media very prominently, was the report which we did on public debt. Last year we had covered about the position, because public debt in Punjab has always been a matter of great concern, and debt has been rising over a period of time. And even in this year it has risen further from the figures that were there last year. This is the these are the broad economic figures for the year ending 2016, 31st March 2016. The revenue deficit of the state continues to rise. It has grown to 8,550 crores as at 31st March 2016. Now these are final figures, and if you would have read the governor's address yesterday, I think they are projecting an even higher figure for the year ended 31st March 2017. I think now it's gone into 5 figures. It's going to be next, once we get the aggregates for the year ended 31st March 2017, I think the revenue deficit is going to be above 10,000 crores now. There continues to be a very large gap between revenue expenditure and revenue receipts. This is the one. There continues to be a large gap between revenue expenditure and revenue receipts, and that, of course, is what the revenue deficit is. And this is just, I'll just go off the track. The government of Haryana presented its budget, and it was, I just happened to read it in the newspapers. I think a few years ago when we were growing up between Punjab and Haryana, Haryana was almost always considered to be a smaller state as far as Punjab was concerned. Punjab's figures were always higher and better than the state of Haryana. But if you were to check the figures for today, you will find that the Haryana economy is almost 1.5 times the economy of Punjab. The revenue receipts, which are last year were 41,523 here, were almost to the order of 60,000 crores. I don't have the exact figure, I forget, but the budget which was presented recently, I think, was talking of revenue receipts of 64,000 crores or something like that. The other matter of concern is that the capital expenditure continues to be very low. So when we talk of total expenditure of about 50,000 crores, we find that the capital expenditure, which actually is expenditure which is spent on creation of assets, on developmental purposes, is only about 3,000 crores. And in fact, over a period of time, it has even come down. If you see here that last year it was only 3,118 crores, and it has come further down to 3,059 crores. So it has decreased even in comparison to the previous year. The budget, and it is much less than what was budgeted for. The budget figure itself was not very large. It was only 4,857 crores, but the government was not able to meet that target also, and they spent only 63% of the budgeted figure. Thanks. This is the figure of the debt. Now, we have not, this is the actual internal debt of the state of Punjab. This excludes other liabilities, and I'll briefly explain to you what other liabilities are. This is as I was mentioning earlier also, this is increased from about 64,000 crores in 11-12 to 1,03,000 crores in 2015-16. And a very large component of this loan is market debt, is the money which has been raised by the government from the market. Almost 65% are market loans. There is a small component of loans from GOI, and of course Government of Punjab invests or issues special securities to the National Small Saving Fund. So that constitutes about 23%. Liabilities, if we include other liabilities, which are actually liabilities on account of what we call public account, that all government servants contribute money, for example, say to GPF. Now whatever deductions are made towards GPF go into the public account of the government, but that money is available with the government to use. So that is basically treated as a loan for the government. So if we were to include that, I think the total debt would be in excess of, I think, almost about 1,29,000, 1,30,000 crores. And this has gone up in comparison to the last year. The exact figure of total debt will be there in our reports, and you can refer to that. This is the position of loans and advances given by the state of Punjab during the to various to its own employees, to various other bodies. Primarily, these loans are either to the employees or to public sector undertakings, and the reason we are showing you this as a separate slide this year is that there has been a spike this year under the Ujjwal Discom, it's called Uday actually, the Uday scheme, which is Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana. The Government of India had come out with this policy that the state government will take over the debt liabilities of the distribution companies as a grant. They will advance this money to the distribution companies as a grant. But because of the poor liquidity position of the Government of Punjab, they were not able to distribute this money as grant, but they took loan raised loan and in turn pass that loan to PSPCL. So that is why you will find that this 5,968 crores includes a very big component of 5,698 crores, which was the loan taken by Government of Punjab and then extended to PSPCL to take care of their debt. So it's basically swapping of debt as far as PSPCL is concerned. That instead of the one bank debt, they have repaid the debt of the banks, but in turn they have contracted a debt from the state of Punjab. And we also found that there was another similar transaction of about 4,262 crores, which has not passed through the books. So what Punjab did, the Government of Punjab did, they raised this loan and asked the lender to transfer the money directly to the power utility. So this money, though the loan actually from the lender was taken by the Government of Punjab, this did not pass through the books of Punjab. So it went straight to PSPCL. So to that extent, this loan has not been accounted for. So I mean, say if we were to take these two loans also, you will see that the debt liability goes up of the Government of Punjab goes up further by this about 4,300 crores. And I think this is a point which we make every year, that the return on investment which the Government of Punjab has made in its various parastatals or the public sector undertakings is very low. And it continues to be at about 0.04, 0.05%. And I think the figure over a period of last few years, the only dividend that the Government of Punjab gets from the various investments made in all its public sectors is only about 1.5 crores. That's all that it gets. In a year, 1.5 crores is the dividend it receives, and therefore, considering the investment it has made, which runs into thousands of crores, the return on that investment is only 0.04%. And if we compare that with the rate at which the Government of Punjab borrows, I would say the borrowings at which the average rate you will find has always been above 8%. So on one hand, Government of Punjab is borrowing at 8%, but the return it is getting on its own investment in its own parastatals is very low. This is a brief on some of the projects. There are still 11 projects. Most of these are irrigation projects, which have where investments to the extent of 450 crores almost have been made. But these projects are still not complete, and most of these major irrigation projects continue to make losses for the state government, and we've computed that during the year they incurred a loss of 295 crores. That is the revenue they get out of these projects is very minimal, whereas they spend a large amount on maintenance and operation and also on servicing the debt or interest charges, payment of interest charges. We did this time, I would say, this is a slightly technical slide in the sense that we did a small study on the management of AC bills. AC bills is basically an advance taken by a government employee to meet daily expenditure. If we do that, it's a sort of an imprest which is taken by a government employee to meet emergent expenditure. So I have money in my pocket in case there is a need, I spend that money, I get a bill, and then I prefer a settlement claim. But we find that in Punjab, AC bills are even being used for capital expenditure. And the results of this were very surprising, that we found that almost 36% of the total expenditure incurred in these treasuries which had selected was drawn in AC bills. Now the problem with AC bills is that if it is not settled, say I draw 1 lakh rupees on an AC bill, and if I don't settle that amount, nobody is sure what I did with that money. Right? I could have as well misappropriated that money because I have not given an account for that money. So that is a big concern, as at 31st March 2016, there were 976 AC bills which amounted to more than 2,000 crores, which was still awaiting adjustment. Pardon? 2,044 crores. The figure is there on the slide. And we also found that the district treasury officers had no means of ensuring that the outstanding AC bills were settled by the concerned departmental officers. And as I mentioned, a very large amount, it's very rare to actually see in most of the states, I'm not sure whether this would be happening, that you are actually drawing money for capital expenditure. AC bills are meant only to meet day-to-day emergent expenditure which you can't foresee, or for which you can't get a bill or an invoice or any other details in advance with which you can draw that money. So this is I would say in a way a bit of concern that large amounts of money, even for capital expenditure, is being drawn on ACLs. But this was as far as our first report is concerned. We now come to the civil report. This also contains 3 chapters. Chapter 1 basically contains the financial profile of the state, more or less, which we've already discussed. Chapter 2 deals with the findings of 4 performance audits which we did this year. And Chapter 3 deals with our audit of various transactions by various departments during the year 2015-16. The total money value of all the objections which we have included in this report is of the order of 226 crores. We did a performance audit on Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan. We found that the Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan is a centrally sponsored scheme, so a lot of money comes from the Government of India. And we find this in many other programs also, that the money which the Government of Punjab has been getting from the centre, or what has been budgeted in its own budget, is not being released to the departmental officers for the implementation of the schemes. Obviously, the reason is that that money is being diverted to meet other things. And Government of Punjab has always been running short of cash. The number of times it has to resort to ways and means advances is very high. So therefore, and this is a recurring feature in all the programs, and in this case also, whereas Government of India had, Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan had about 1,362 crores at its disposal for implementation of this program in 2011-16, but this was the amount which was released short. This was not the money which was available, but this was not released by the Government of Punjab at all. And in the 2 years itself, Government of Punjab did not release 50 crores which it had got from the Government of India. We also found that resource teachers are to be deployed to meet the needs of children who have special needs. To meet the requirements of children who have special needs, children with disabilities and all. So under Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, you need to have these resource teachers to ensure that these children are taken care of. We found that the resource deployment of resource teachers was inadequate. There were no norms fixed by the state for deployment of such teachers, and there were no resource teachers in the state in case of children with multiple disabilities, cerebral palsy, learning disability, autism, and other spectrum disabilities. So, and we found that there were more than 18,000 children in the state of Punjab who were suffering from these disabilities and who were not provided support through the deployment of resource teachers. Next. Under Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, the 2 sets of uniforms are to be provided to the students every year. We found that against the requirement of 2 sets, in the previous 5 years, only 1 set of uniform was provided. We also found that the Department of Education incurred an expenditure of 6.76 crores on purchase of books, which was beyond the norms which were fixed by the Ministry of Human Resources and Development. We also found that 1,170 primary schools in Punjab are running only with 1 teacher, whereas under the Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, the minimum norm is only 2 teachers. I would say that norm also is not very substantial, but in Punjab we found that 1,170 primary schools have only 1 teacher on their rolls, and 572 upper primary schools are functioning with less than 3 teachers. Now 3 teachers is the norm for an upper primary school, but out of the total primary schools, there are 572 upper primary schools in the state which do not even have 3 teachers. I don't know whether you are aware, there is a major automation program going on the financial side in all the states. It's called the IFMS, or it's called Integrated Financial Management System. It's an automated IT-based system, and now all the treasuries and all the DDOs have been linked through a common network. All have been provided computers, and they are all linked through a network, with the idea that all financial transactions will not now take place on paper, will not be routed by paper, but will be routed electronically. Even the payments eventually are to be made. So if I have to receive anything from the government, the treasury will not issue me a check, but make that payment electronically directly into my account. The idea is to do away with all the manual interventions and to have better control over all financial transactions. Now, since it's a very crucial program and it's a very crucial system which has been devised, we decided to do what we call an IT audit. We didn't, so basically the idea was how safe is the new IT system that has been put in place. So we did an information technology audit of integrated financial management system. The first point which we found was that though Punjab has a Punjab State E-Governance Society which was created actually to implement all these sort of projects, in spite of that, the state government hired Punjab Infotech, which of course is a public sector undertaking, but Punjab Infotech charged 4% of the project cost for implementation of the project, whereas the E-Governance Society would have done it without charging anything, because this is what the society was created for. And this resulted in an avoidable expenditure of about 1.6 crores. We found that in IFMS, the treasury operations and pension modules are still to be implemented. We also found that, as I was mentioning about the AC bills, which I just briefly discussed earlier, that there was no system of capturing those and to ensuring that all the outstanding AC bills have been adjusted. Though actually the number of outstanding AC bills was only 976, but the system, the IFMS was showing that there were 49,277 AC bills amounting to 7,400 crores which were outstanding. So that means the system is still not reliable, and there is still issues about data integrity and the quality of data that is available in this system. By DDOs is concerned, there were dummy active DDO codes in the database, which means that anybody who is not an authorized user can actually get into the system and start making financial transactions. And now, as you know, we all operate, we operate our bank accounts online, right? If I were to make a transfer today, I would probably go to the website of my bank and make an electronic transfer. But it leaves, unless you really investigate deeper down, it leaves very little trail for you to actually at a later stage know where it has gone. If you at least issue a check, you will have something to fall back on. So the problem with these sort of systems is that if the proper checks have not been introduced in the system, it is open to misuse and can lead to misappropriation or irregular use. The other flagship mission which we covered this year is the National Rural Health Mission. Rural Health Mission is a very large program, and it covers all aspects, but we did only what we call RCH, only on reproductive and child health, which is basically the care of pregnant women and immediately postnatal care. So it basically involves antenatal care and postnatal care. Again, we found that 23% of the allocated funds under reproductive and child health program were not utilized. We also found that there is a shortage of sub-centers and primary public health centers or primary health centers in the state. This is to the extent of 15% and 26%. And this we found that this shortage existed during the entire period of 5 years. We also found that the community health centers and the public health centers, most of them did not have essential infrastructure facilities which are required. Most of them did not have ultrasound facility. There was no provision for blood storage. There were no infrastructure available for carrying out safe abortions. And in most cases, we also found that the required drugs were also not available. And of course, there is, and I think the health department in Punjab, we are all aware, is faced with acute staff shortages. We found that there was an overall shortage of 62% of medical and paramedical staff against the sanction strength, as well as 100% shortage in some cadres with reference to the Indian public health standards. Now, these are standards which have been prescribed by the Government of India. It fixes the norms for various things, including staff. Of course, Government of Punjab states, as of now, the Government of Punjab's position is that given our present resources and present staff position, it will not be possible for us to meet the norms fixed under the Indian public health standards. We also found that 11 to 21% of pregnant women could not be covered for providing essential health care, that is antenatal checkups, and that was primary purpose of the reproductive and child health component of the National Rural Health Mission. There were no, antenatal checkups were not carried out. Iron and folic acid tablets and tetanus toxoid immunization in a substantial number of cases were not delivered. domestic deliveries, the idea of National Rural Health Mission is now to do away with domestic deliveries and encourage all women who to come to move to the institutions for institutional deliveries for the safety of the mother and the child. We found that the domestic deliveries continue to persist, though they're improved over a period of time from 2011 to 2016. The position is improving. The targets in administering doses of vitamin A and family planning methods. And we also found that the state could not achieve the targeted maternal mortality rate. The maternal mortality continues to be higher than the target fixed under NRHM for the state of Punjab. However, the target in respect of IMR has been achieved, which is a positive sign and encouraging feature that as far as infant mortality is concerned, the rate Punjab has been able to do better than the target which was fixed for it. It has been a while since we had covered sports in our audit. So this year we decided to do a performance audit of the Punjab State Sports Council. Though the Sports Council is the nodal body in the state for encouraging sports and sportsmen, and also building and providing infrastructure in rural areas as well as semi-urban areas for promotion and development of sport, we found that the Sports Council had no prospective plan or annual plan for action. I would say what they were planning to do was there was no holistic plan whereby the council would say that this is what I am going to do for this year, or there was no prospective plan for a period of 3 or 5 years. We also found that in large number of cases where it had created infrastructure and it was being let out to members to use that facility, the membership fees was not being collected. And in the test check, what we did in a small sample we checked, we found that this amounted to about 1.50 crores. We also found that the Sports Council had been organizing the World Kabaddi tournaments, which had been organized over the last few years. I think 5 or 6 World Kabaddi tournaments had been organized. We have a full section on the Kabaddi tournaments in this performance audit. We found that almost 1.8 crores was spent during the various World Cup Kabaddi tournaments in contravention to financial rules. And we also found in one particular case that about 2 lakhs was disbursed on bogus bills for transport services during one of the tournaments. We found that the board has still not, the basic revenue source of the board is the money it gets from the market committees. We found that it has not evolved any mechanism to recover the amounts from the market committees, as a result of which almost 110.94 crores on account of sale of plots and loan of 6.05 crores was outstanding against the committees. Which resulted in the Agriculture Marketing Board having a very poor financial position. We also found that the Marketing Board undertook various projects without actually conducting a demand survey, whether there was need. They construct shops and all at various places, and we found that almost 70 crores was spent on projects which were still lying unutilized, and therefore they were either lying unutilized or they were incomplete, with the result that this whole expenditure has not been able to bear any fruit so far. We also covered drug de-addiction and rehabilitation centers last year, considering that drug abuse is a problem in Punjab. We again found that the government was unable to avail of the full central assistance of 36 lakhs because it failed to submit the utilization certificates. And we also found that the drug addiction, de-addiction and rehabilitation centers suffered because of shortage of manpower. And in some cases, the manpower shortage was almost to the extent of 100%. That in some cadres where you were required to have doctors or counsellors, they did not have anybody there. We found out of total 57 drug de-addiction and rehabilitation centers which are operating in the state, 35 have been operating without any licenses. And 5 drug de-addiction and rehabilitation centers which have been set up at a cost of 6.93 crores were not functional at all because there was no staff or equipment in those de-addiction centers. There was also cases of excess expenditure on purchase of medicines to the tune of 2.40 crores. There is a project for development of judicial infrastructure, which basically means construction of court complexes and construction of residences for judicial officers. We found that almost 78% of the works planned during the years 2013 to 2016 could not be completed for various reasons, primarily for lack of availability of land, funds were not released, and there was delay in commencement of works for various reasons. We also found that almost 28 crores were not released by the state government, but on the other hand, about 32 crores were spent on works which were not even covered under the scheme. So they were spent on buildings which were not included as a part of the project. There was a case where one particular site was not made available, which resulted in additional expenditure of 1.64 crores and the work remaining incomplete for over 6 years. And then there was another case of short recovery of 39 lakhs because of non-adherence to provisions of agreement. Then individual transactions which we came across one transaction where was the jails department transferred its land to Punjab Small Industries and Export Corporation and did not recover the full cost from the corporation, whereas the corporation had acquired that land to utilize it for commercial purposes, which means they developed the land and sold it and made a profit in that. But the government did not receive due remuneration for this, which resulted in a loss of 21 crores. And actually this land was sold to upgrade the jail facilities or the jail infrastructures. But we found that the jail department could have got 21 crores more, which they did not. There was also a case where the land acquisition award was delayed substantially, which resulted in escalation of cost of that acquisition, and that avoidable payment on account of appreciation of price was 11.23 crores. We also touched on the accelerated irrigation benefits program. We found that that there are 2 or 3 projects which are being done under this, which have not been, I think they have not even been started as of now. And as a result, an interest liability of 62.09 crores has been created due to non-implementation of these 2 projects, despite availability of funds. And since this projects had not been started, almost 75 crores which the government had got from the Government of India, they could not utilize that because the works were not completed in time and the state's own share was not released by the state. There was delay of 43 and 60 months in awarding works, which led to cost overrun of 1.81 crores. Material worth almost 4.5 crores has been procured and has been kept for more than 7 years and has not been utilized. Next. Similarly, we found that the Public Works Department incurred an additional expenditure of 7.73 crores because of failure to ensure availability of an encumbrance-free site and making sure that they had adequate financial resources to pay to the contractor for this work. But this resulted in escalations and other causes, which resulted in extra expenditure of 7.73 crores. Similarly, we found that delay in initiating land acquisition process and therefore delay in fixing market value of land and announcement of award beyond the stipulated period resulted in an extra expenditure of 13.25 crores. Under the Land Acquisition Act, now all stages of land acquisition time periods have been fixed. So it is for various stages that has been fixed, and if you delay that, the government is liable to pay interest, and this is what it was about. We did on the environmental clearances of various projects which are given by the state committee. We found that there is no mechanism in the state of Punjab to ensure that the conditions under which environmental clearances are given to various projects are actually adhered to. The government has no mechanism to ensure oversight of those conditions. We found there are a large number of projects which have been operating without valid environmental clearances, either from the committee which has been constituted for this purpose or from PPCB, which is the Punjab Pollution Control Board. Or there were cases where necessary clearances from Central Groundwater Board had not been taken. fly ash is not being utilized as per the environmental requirements. नहीं ठीक है हाँ नहीं I understand that. मैं ऐसे करता हूँ I will just हाँ जी हाँ okay then I will suggest there are 2 or 3 issues जेडे तो मैं civil reports cover कर लेने. There is one I think which is of interest, which would be of interest. One is in our power sector, in our PSU's report, we have covered 2 topics on PSPCL. One is on power purchase, right? I think power purchase is very much in the news again, and the new government is probably going to have a look into it, where there have been many issues which we pointed out, that the government of Punjab is its own power plants are shut, but it is buying power from outside, right? With the result that it is incurring extra expenditure. So if you see in the briefs which we have given you, I think almost the total amount was about, I think, more than 2,000 crores, which we found that was paid extra, out of which almost 1,400 crores has been passed on to the consumers. 800 crores has been not been disallowed by the PSERC, so therefore that has not formed a part of the tariff. But almost more than 1,400 crores has already passed through. Similarly, in billing and tariff, we found that there is a huge outstanding on billing and tariff, and I think one point of interest which I was seeing and which might interest you is that the security deposits which you and I give when we apply for a meter, for a power connection, we are all entitled to get interest on that. When we found that PSPCL is not providing for interest on that, and that amounts to about 385 crores, which is due for the. On the revenue side, we did. We have done a performance audit of the stamp duty and registration fee. Right, those are a little technical, but there also we found that there was short realization of almost 72 crores on account of not registering documents, or then not treating a property as it should be treated. In most cases, a property which attracts a higher rate of stamp duty was shown as an agricultural land or an agricultural property. So those sort of things have happened, and there are details of that. Similarly, there were various cases in VAT. There are cases where remissions or concessions are given on the basis of various declarations. Now that issue has also been taken by us in a number of times earlier, and while this issue was being discussed in the PAC has made it very clear that no concessions are to be given on incorrect or defective declaration forms, but that continues to happen, and substantial concessions have been granted this year also on VAT on account of faulty declarations given by the traders or whoever is the assessing. Similarly, there are cases about motor vehicles tax, where there are different cases where educational institutions who run buses, who have to pay motor vehicles tax, have not been paid. We also did on lotteries this year, though lotteries in Punjab is not a very major issue. Lotteries are they're most in the northeastern state, but we did on how the lottery system is being managed in Punjab. We found that the agents who are contracted for the sale of these lottery tickets were appointed without inviting tenders, whereas in all other states where lotteries is big business, the requirement is that, and the correct procedure also is that they should be appointed after calling for tenders. So that there is in the lottery system there is no provision for appointing some agents, but some of the agents had appointed sub-agents and bonuses were being paid to them and all. As far as the public sector undertakings are concerned, I'll give you the overall position of the PSUs. There are 23 working PSUs in the state of Punjab, out of which 8 accounts which we received this year showed a book profit of 231 crores. Now, mind you, these are book profits. For example, PSPCL, for example, has been showing book profits over the last many years. But the audited figures, after the chartered accountant has finished his audit and we have finished our audit, in all the years that profit has been converted to loss, right? But what is reported continues to be the book figure. So these are the book figures. So though they showed a profit of 231.44 crores, similarly 15 accounts reflected a total loss of 877.32 crores. So overall the portfolio of public sectors is a heavily loss-making portfolio for the government of Punjab, and the most heaviest losses are being incurred by the procurement agencies. For example, the figures I have, Pangrain loss was 370 crores, Punjab State Warehousing Corporation's loss was 189 crores, Agro Food Grains Corporation's loss is 96 crores, and Pansap's loss is 90.51 crores. So these are heavily loss-making companies or public sector undertakings. Similarly, we did a performance audit on the working of Punjab Water Resources Management and Development Corporation. This is a corporation which is primarily involved in digging of tube wells and all. And there are important points, there are interesting points there which you can look up in the handouts which have been given to you. Issues, there are issues as always on procurement which have been included in the report. You could have a look on that. If you're in a hurry, this is some of the major things which we had. In case you have any clarifications to seek, you're welcome.
Expenditure of 6.76 crore in the textbook scam. Which are these firms which were involved in purchase of books?
We will.
Because the purpose of the entire exercise is defeated if you don't get the names of those firms which were used to purchase the books.
Will we have those names? Rohan, we'll have to find out. Because
second question, you mentioned about the environment norms being violated, the PCCB. Was Supreme Father's audit result part of this scrutiny or not?
Not. It wasn't. It wasn't. Because was that a part of the... We had taken only projects which were approved during a particular period.
I'll tell you why this question is being because his audit results is the only hospitality firm which has been under scrutiny for the last 2 years by the court and also by the media, and the road which was constructed, 29 Crore Road, that was the only hotel which had a private road going on from the government exchequer. So was that a violation of norm or not? Was it scrutinized by the CAG?
No, that was not a part of a sample for the reason that I think our sample was of those projects which were approved in environmental clearances taken up to 2012. I think this probably happened after that, and this would come up for scrutiny in the later audits which we will do, but not as a part of this. Think about, I think we are doing this year we are doing a study on Greater Mohali Area Development Agency. So some of these issues would probably come up at that point of time because all this area falls under GMADA.